Dear learners, welcome back to WSE Legendary Lives, where language, myth, and memory intertwine to bring the timeless voices of the past into our present. Today, let your imagination awaken as we journey into a story that glows with light, music, and prophecy. He was called Phoebus, the Radiant One. An archer whose arrows were beams of sunlight, whose music could still the storms of a restless heart, and whose words carried the power of vision, piercing through the veil of time itself. His name is Apollo, son of Zeus, and even among the immortal gods, he shines as a figure of harmony and contradiction, healer and destroyer, gentle muse and relentless avenger. This is not just a tale of gods and heroes. It is a mirror of our own lives, of the tension between power and wisdom, beauty and discipline, vision and blindness. Apollo's story shows us how light can heal, yet also burn, how music can soothe, yet also unsettle, how prophecy can guide, yet also wound. As you listen, you will not only learn about a god revered across the ancient world, but also touch the timeless human questions he embodies. Where does true harmony come from? Can light exist without shadow? And what happens when even the radiant archer must face his own limits? Support our work by liking, commenting, sharing, or joining. Your support helps us keep creating meaningful content. Prepare to enter the myth. Let the legend of Apollo begin. Long before Apollo's radiant figure stood among the gods of Olympus, his story began with a mother wandering in fear, and a father whose thunder shook the heavens. He was the son of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Leto, a Titaness known for her quiet dignity. Yet his birth was not welcomed by all. Hera, the jealous queen of Olympus, raged against Leto, forbidding any land to shelter her as she carried Zeus's children within her womb. For days and nights, Leto drifted across the seas and wandered the earth, rejected again and again. Mountains turned her away. Islands trembled at Hera's curse. The very earth itself seemed hostile. At last, a small floating island, Delos, gave her refuge. It was barren, fragile, yet willing to bear her burden. There, beneath the gaze of the eternal sky, Apollo and his twin sister Artemis were born. One to embody the hunt, the moon, and the wilderness, the other to bear the sun, the lyre, and the far-shooting bow. Apollo's first cry was said to bring sudden brilliance across the sky, as if the world had received not just a god, but a force of balance and clarity. Even as an infant, he was seen not merely as a child of Zeus, but as the embodiment of order in contrast to chaos. The Greeks revered this origin story not simply for its divine drama, but for its deeper meaning. Leto's suffering spoke of resilience against rejection, of finding light in exile. Delos, a wandering island, symbolized how even the weakest ground can become sacred when chosen by destiny. Apollo's birth was therefore more than a mythic event, it was a cultural emblem of hope, that light can emerge even in desolation. As the centuries passed, Apollo's worship spread far beyond Delos. He became the god of Delphi, where his oracle spoke truths hidden from human eyes. He became the protector of youths, the guardian of cities, the healer who brought medicine, and the archer who punished arrogance with swift retribution. No single god embodied so many aspects of life, the arts and the sciences, war and peace, prophecy and healing. And yet, from his very beginning, Apollo carried the mark of duality, light that illuminates, but also blinds. Harmony that comforts, but also demands discipline. His cultural significance lay not in being a god of perfection, but in embodying the tensions within existence itself. But every radiance must first face its shadows. Apollo, though born to brilliance, would soon encounter the first imbalance that tested his nature. Though Apollo's birth brought brilliance, the world did not immediately bow to his radiance. A god's light, no matter how dazzling, must first be tested. And for Apollo, the test came swiftly. Even as a youth, Apollo was filled with pride, a flame that both inspired and endangered him. He was radiant, gifted in music, archery, and prophecy. Yet this very abundance made him restless, eager to prove himself. The first challenge that defined him arose not from mortals, but from the ancient powers of the earth itself. Deep in the valley of Delphi, at the foot of Mount Parnassus, a monstrous serpent known as Python coiled in darkness. Born from the earth, it was said to spread pestilence and chaos wherever it slithered. The oracle of Gaia, the earth goddess, once spoke through this place, but now Python corrupted it, twisting prophecy into dread. For Apollo, who was destined to be the god of truth and prophecy, Python was not just a beast, it was a shadow cast over his rightful domain. Armed with his silver bow, Apollo confronted the serpent. The clash was more than battle, it was symbol against symbol, light against decay, order against primal chaos. Arrows of pure light flew from his bow, piercing through the thick, scaled hide of the creature. The earth trembled, rivers boiled, and the cries of the monster echoed across the mountains. At last, with a final shot, Apollo struck Python down. The valley fell silent. With this act, Apollo claimed Delphi as his sanctuary. The oracle once tied to Gaia became his, and through it he spoke the will of Zeus to mortals. Yet this triumph was not without consequences. For killing Python, a child of the earth, Apollo had stained himself with blood guilt. Even gods were not free from divine justice. To cleanse himself, Apollo had to undergo ritual purification, submitting to exile and penance. This was Apollo's first imbalance, his first brush with the truth that light cannot simply erase shadow without cost. In his eagerness to seize his place, he learned that victory carries responsibility, and that even gods must humble themselves before higher laws. The Greeks, in telling this story, hinted at something deeply human, that our first triumphs often come with unintended burdens, and that greatness requires not just power, but restraint. It was also a reminder that Apollo, though radiant, was no stranger to shadow. His arrows could heal or destroy. His music could soothe or torment. His visions could guide or terrify. This duality, revealed so early, set the stage for the trials that would follow. For though he had claimed Delphi and secured a place among the Olympians as a god of prophecy, the radiant archer's heart would soon be tested again, this time not by monsters of the earth, but by the fiery storms of passion, rivalry, and love. But that was only the beginning. An even greater challenge awaited him, one that would demand not just strength, but wisdom. Having seized Delphi and proven his place among the Olympians, Apollo's radiance spread across the world. Yet every light that shines too brightly must face storms that test its endurance. The journey that awaited him was not simply to wield power, but to learn harmony between strength, passion, and restraint. One of Apollo's first divine tests came in the realm of music. The radiant god was unmatched in the lyre, his melodies said to weave the very order of the cosmos. But when pride grew within him, he could not resist a contest against Marsyas, a satyr who played the flute with raw, untamed genius. The challenge was more than music, it was civilization against wildness, discipline against instinct. The contest began. Apollo's fingers danced across the strings of his lyre, each note a golden thread binding heaven and earth. Marsyas answered with wild, rushing tones, like rivers in flood, like winds in the forest. The satyr's music stirred hearts, raw and primal, while Apollo's lifted souls toward harmony and clarity. For a time, the duel seemed even, as mortals and gods listened in awe. Then Apollo, determined to prove himself, added a twist. He played the lyre upside down, singing while playing. Marsyas, unable to match such skill, faltered. The contest ended, and Apollo stood victorious. But victory did not bring joy. For in his pride, Apollo punished Marsyas cruelly, flaying him alive for daring to challenge a god. This act revealed a darker truth, that light without compassion becomes blinding. The Greeks remembered this tale as a warning that even beauty, when mixed with arrogance, can lead to destruction. It was a divine test that Apollo failed, and one that marked him with the burden of hubris. Yet not all of Apollo's trials ended in shadow. Another came through his desire for love, a test of passion and restraint. The nymph Daphne, daughter of a river god, became the object of his relentless pursuit after he was struck by Eros's golden arrow. Yet Daphne was pierced with a leaden arrow, filling her with repulsion toward him. Apollo, in the full blaze of desire, chased her across forests and rivers. Her heart cried for freedom, for purity untouched by the gods' embrace. At last, in desperation, she called upon her father, who transformed her into a laurel tree just as Apollo reached out his arms. The god of light clasped only rough bark and trembling leaves. From that day, the laurel became his sacred symbol, a crown of victory and poetry. Yet in this test, Apollo's passion was met not with triumph, but with loss. He learned that not even divine power could command love, that desire without respect leads only to sorrow. Through these journeys, contests of pride, pursuits of passion, Apollo faced trials that mirrored the human condition. For what is music if not the struggle between chaos and harmony? What is love if not the fragile balance between longing and freedom? His tests were not distant myths, but reflections of the same struggles that mortals still face. And so Apollo's story moves deeper. From music and love, his trials would grow sharper, darker, as he confronted not only the wounds of pride, but the unyielding test of fate itself. But what do you think these moments truly represent? Are they simply tales of gods, or symbols of the choices every heart must face between pride and humility, passion and respect? The greatest trial still awaited Apollo, one that would strike not his pride, but the very core of his vision and destiny. Though Apollo had faced rivals in music and the heartbreak of love, his greatest trial came when he was forced to confront the limits of divine pride and the deep responsibilities of justice. It was not a beast, nor a rival musician, nor even unrequited love that shaped this turning point, but an act of defiance against Zeus himself, the very father who had given him light. The trial began when Asclepius, Apollo's beloved son, learned the healing arts. Gifted with divine skill, Asclepius could cure the sick and even raise the dead. To mortals, he was a blessing, a hope beyond despair. But to the gods, his power disrupted the balance between life and death. Hades raged, Zeus trembled at the thought of mortals escaping mortality, and so, with a stroke of his thunderbolt, Zeus struck Asclepius down. Apollo's heart, usually radiant with song and prophecy, darkened with fury. He had lost not just a son, but the embodiment of his healing light. In his grief, he turned against Zeus's will. Apollo struck back, killing the Cyclopes who forged Zeus's thunderbolts, an act of vengeance that shattered the harmony of Olympus. The punishment was swift. For daring to defy the king of the gods, Apollo was stripped of his place among the Olympians. No longer radiant in the halls of immortals, he was cast down to serve as a mortal shepherd in the house of King Admetus. The god of light became a servant of men. This was Apollo's great turning point, a descent into humility, where his bow and lyre gave way to the quiet labor of tending flocks. Yet within this exile lay the seed of transformation. For Admetus treated Apollo not as a fallen god, but as a guest and friend. In return, Apollo blessed his household with prosperity. He even repaid Admetus's kindness by helping him win the hand of Alcestis, a mortal princess. Here, Apollo's radiance did not blaze in triumph, but shone in gentleness, in loyalty, in quiet service. But the trial was not only external. Within Apollo, two truths wrestled: rage at injustice, and the need for harmony. He had sought vengeance, and it had cost him his son, his honor, his place among the gods. Now, in exile, he tasted the lesson that light cannot exist without humility. The Greeks saw in this turning point a profound truth: even gods must bow to justice, and even light must dim in order to renew its glow. Apollo's exile mirrored the human experience of loss and penance, the way grief can break us, yet also teach us compassion. When his punishment ended and he returned to Olympus, Apollo was not the same. He had been humbled, tested, reshaped. His power was still radiant, but now it carried the weight of responsibility. He had learned that vengeance, no matter how justified, brings only more shadow. The path of the radiant archer was not simply to shine, but to balance, to harmonize the discord of life with wisdom. This was the great trial of Apollo, his turning point from a radiant youth burning with pride, to a god tempered by grief and exile. Yet his journey was far from over. Ahead lay the moment of deepest conflict, where he would not only face external challenges, but undergo the profound transformation that would define his legacy. Do you believe this myth still carries meaning in our modern world? When we face loss and injustice, is it vengeance that heals us, or the humility to endure, transform, and find balance again? For Apollo, the answer would come in the climax of his story, when his radiance was tested to its very core. The radiant archer had faced beasts, rival musicians, and even the wrath of Zeus. He had endured exile and grief, learned humility, and returned tempered with wisdom. But Apollo's greatest transformation came not from an enemy outside, but from the struggle within, the demand to reconcile his dual nature of light and shadow, of harmony and vengeance. The stage for this climax was Delphi, the sanctuary he had claimed by slaying Python. For centuries, mortals came to hear his oracle, seeking guidance for wars, journeys, and kingdoms. But prophecy is not merely a gift, it is a burden. To speak truth is to confront fate, and fate is not always kind. One of Apollo's most haunting prophecies came with the tale of Orestes, son of Agamemnon. When Agamemnon was murdered by his wife, Clytemnestra, Orestes sought Apollo's guidance. The god, bound by the duty of justice, commanded the son to avenge his father, even if it meant killing his own mother. Orestes obeyed, but the act unleashed the Furies, ancient spirits of vengeance, who pursued him mercilessly. Here lies Apollo's deepest conflict. As the god of prophecy, he had spoken truth. As the god of justice, he had defended duty. Yet in commanding a son to kill his mother, he had entangled himself in a cycle of blood that even his light could not resolve. Was he a god of harmony, or had he become an instrument of endless strife? The tension came to trial in Athens, where Orestes was judged before the first mortal court. Apollo himself stood as his defender, arguing that justice lay with the father's blood, not the mother's. Athena, goddess of wisdom, presided over the case. The verdict was balanced on the edge of uncertainty, until Athena cast her vote for mercy, absolving Orestes and breaking the cycle of vengeance. This moment was Apollo's transformation. He had led Orestes to vengeance, but it was Athena who taught the final lesson, that harmony is not found in endless retribution, but in mercy, balance, and law. From that day forward, Delphi's oracle was not only a place of fate, but of reflection, a reminder that truth without wisdom is dangerous, and justice without compassion is hollow. For Apollo, the climax was both a revelation and a humbling. His radiance was no longer the blinding blaze of youth, nor the vengeful fire of grief. It became a tempered light, one that illuminated the limits of even divine vision. He understood that prophecy does not erase choice, that harmony requires more than truth, and that every arrow of justice must be guided by mercy. The Greeks saw this climax as a turning point in their own culture. Through Apollo, they envisioned the shift from blood feuds to law, from vengeance to courts, from chaos to order. His transformation reflected their struggle to build civilization, to tame the wild cycles of revenge with the wisdom of dialogue and judgment. And so Apollo, the radiant archer, emerged not as a flawless god, but as a figure of profound contradiction, one who carried the brilliance of art, healing, and prophecy, yet bore the scars of pride, grief, and guilt. In this contradiction lay his greatness, for it mirrored the human spirit itself. The climax of his journey was not about triumph, but about transformation, the realization that light must walk hand in hand with shadow, and that even the most radiant figure must bow to wisdom beyond himself. From here, Apollo's path moved toward restoration and legacy. His story no longer burned with the wildness of youth, but glowed with the steady flame of tradition, culture, and guidance for generations. But the question remains, is Apollo's radiance a symbol of perfection or of struggle? Was his greatness found in his victories, or in the way he bore his failures and transformed through them? For the Greeks, and for us, that is the riddle at the heart of his myth. And it is this riddle that shaped his enduring legacy. From the flames of conflict and the shadows of grief, Apollo emerged not as an untouchable god of perfection, but as a radiant figure whose contradictions shaped the very soul of Greek culture. His story was never about simple triumph, it was about the restoration of harmony after discord, of light after shadow, of balance after excess. After the trial of Orestes and the birth of law in Athens, Apollo's image transformed. He was no longer seen merely as the vengeful archer or the impulsive youth chasing nymphs through the woods. He became the guardian of civilization itself. His oracle at Delphi was not only a place of prophecy, but a sanctuary where kings, generals, and simple pilgrims alike sought guidance. Know thyself and nothing in excess, these maxims, inscribed at his temple, became the cornerstones of Greek wisdom. They echoed Apollo's own journey, from arrogance to humility, from vengeance to balance. In music, he was remembered not for punishing Marsyas, but for inspiring harmony and beauty that ordered the universe. The strings of his lyre symbolized the bonds between heaven and earth, mind and spirit, passion and discipline. His music taught that true art does not seek domination, but harmony. In medicine, though he had lost his son Asclepius to Zeus's wrath, Apollo's legacy endured. He remained honored as the god who could bring both plague and healing, a reminder that the power to wound and the power to heal often lie in the same hands. Mortals who sought healing prayed first for Apollo's mercy, knowing that light itself can scorch as easily as it warms. In prophecy, he was not only the voice of fate, but the teacher of reflection. His words often came in riddles, forcing mortals to think deeply, to weigh their choices, to confront themselves. This was no accident. Apollo's legacy was not to enslave mortals to destiny, but to guide them into self-knowledge. And in his radiant image, the archer with the bow of light, the youth crowned with laurel, the god whose beauty stirred awe, Apollo became the embodiment of the Greek ideal, balance of body, mind, and spirit. He represented the harmony of opposites, the pursuit of excellence tempered by wisdom. This restoration was not the erasure of his flaws, but their transformation into lessons. His cruelty toward Marsyas warned against arrogance. His grief over Asclepius reminded mortals that love and loss bind even the divine. His pursuit of Daphne, ending in unfulfilled desire, symbolized the limits of power. His defense of Orestes showed the tension between justice and mercy. Through each flaw and triumph, Apollo became a mirror of human struggle, radiant not because he was perfect, but because he illuminated the path toward balance. For the Greeks, his legacy reached far beyond myth. Every festival of song, every court of justice, every healer's prayer, every temple of reason and reflection bore traces of Apollo's spirit. His story carried forward into Roman times and beyond, where he remained the emblem of youth, order, and enlightenment. Even centuries later, artists, poets, and thinkers looked to him as the patron of reason, clarity, and art. The god who once burned with the impatience of youth became, in memory, the eternal light of harmony. His restoration was not a single moment, but an enduring presence, a radiance that continued to guide mortals through the shadows of life. Yet even as his legacy grew, the question lingered: was Apollo truly a god of perfect harmony, or did his greatness lie in the struggle to find it? Perhaps that is why he endures, not as an unreachable sun, but as a light that flickers, dims, and rises again, showing us the rhythm of our own imperfect journeys. But Apollo's story does not end here. Beyond his legacy lies a deeper treasure, the lessons and symbolic meanings that still resonate for us today. When we look at Apollo's story as a whole, what emerges is not a portrait of flawless divinity, but of a god whose light was shaped by shadow, whose harmony was forged through discord. His legend is more than myth, it is a meditation on the human condition, a mirror reflecting our deepest struggles and aspirations. The first lesson is about balance. Apollo was radiant, yet he faltered when pride led him to cruelty. He was compassionate, yet vengeance clouded his judgment. His journey shows us that light without shadow is incomplete, and that true harmony comes not from avoiding conflict, but from reconciling opposites. The Greeks captured this truth in the words carved at Delphi: nothing in excess. His life reminds us that wisdom is found not at the extremes, but in balance. The second lesson is about humility. Even the son of Zeus was not beyond exile, guilt, or grief. Apollo's punishment for defying Zeus, his sorrow at losing Asclepius, his humiliation in love, all reveal that power without humility collapses into ruin. His willingness to endure penance among mortals teaches that greatness requires not only strength, but also the courage to bow, to learn, to serve. The third lesson is about vision. As the god of prophecy, Apollo's gift was not simply to foretell events, but to guide mortals toward reflection. His oracles often spoke in riddles, reminding seekers that truth is rarely simple. In this way, Apollo's voice echoes across time. Real vision is not about knowing the future, but about seeing ourselves clearly in the present. Finally, Apollo's story teaches us about resilience. From his mother Leto's desperate wanderings to his own transformations through exile and trial, Apollo embodies the belief that even in rejection, suffering, or loss, light can rise again. The barren island of Delos became sacred ground, the grief of exile became wisdom, and the laurel tree, born of loss, became a crown of victory. These lessons are not relics of the past. They live in us today. Whenever we face the tension between pride and humility, desire and restraint, vengeance and mercy, Apollo's story whispers its timeless truth: harmony is not given, it is chosen. Which part of this story stayed with you the most, and why? For in the end, the radiant archer's arrows were not only shafts of sunlight, but metaphors for the choices we all must make, to wound or to heal, to blind or to illuminate, to live in shadow or to shine with balance. And now, as we close Apollo's journey, let us step into the final part, a quiet reflection and farewell, where myth becomes memory, and memory becomes inspiration.